if I were to just pepper you with a bunch of questions, it probably would be a boring conversation. So, just firing up. And then people, what happens when you fire off a bunch of questions, I think, is people just go yes, no, maybe. And then you're just like, as somebody trying to do an interview or quote unquote, interview with somebody, it's so hard. It's like pulling teeth. So you really just want to have a conversation, like what's going on in the world. And I think that's what I like to do is have conversations, and then out of that, you kind of add some questions in there. But yeah, it sure has been a wild couple weeks though in short session. Have you been down? You came down, right, for one of the days or something for opening one of
No,
the not opening day, but
I,
one of the other days you
I was
sung or
going to
something.
come down. I think I came down maybe a couple of weeks ahead of time just to meet with people. And I came down in December. I have not been down since the start of opening session, though,
Okay.
or since the start
Well,
of the session.
weren't you like one of the? You were going to be one of the singers in one of those singing groups or whatever that does the opening ceremonies.
Yeah, the Rosarians came down for opening session. They did
Oh, Rosarian. Yeah, that's what it was. Rosarian.
they they sang the national anthem, and I actually got invited down by Rep Isidore's brother, who's a Rosarian. He said, "Oh yeah, you got to come down. I'll introduce you." Um,
No, nice.
but I had another event up here to go to, a luncheon to meet with
I'd like
some people from the metro area.
Reagan and I'd like to have Rep. Isidore on the pod. I think we're going to have Representative Choateson on, I think, next week. And then, we're kind of venturing into the Democrats. It's they're very apprehensive, but I think it's just a conversation. I think it's kind of fun to weigh into that. And, speaking, one Democrat we've had on was your former opponent and she Anessa Hartman, who voted no on the gas tax, which is she'll forever be a hero in my mind for voting no, having the fortitude to vote no, because one of the things that I've noticed in the short session especially is the amount of pressure that is applied to some of the Democrats by the I don't know if you want to call them like the far left union groups and the far left OLCV Thousand Friends kind of groups. I mean, the amount of pressure they put on some of those Democrats is it's insane. I mean, it's really bad, and I think that's what we've seen in short session. And short session should be like bills that are ready to go, that people have been working on in the interim, things that didn't quite get over the finish line in long session. But there's been a slew of just like a bunch of new stuff that we just don't even have the time or the dedication to, the vet to work through. And it's really kind of made for a very tense scenario in the Capitol. And it's just going to get worse next week. So you should come down next week. It should be fun with 15.99 on the floor and the gas tax being moved to May. I think it's good. It might be a good time. I always like the Capitol when you have all those intense debates on the floor and stuff. It does make for a little bit more better to see governing in action, as they say.
Yeah, and I think with especially with the hot topic of 1599 of them trying to essentially what the media is saying, we're trying to rewrite the laws, rewrite the rules so that they can push it through. Um, all of the what I would classify in my former line of work as evidence of what the intent of the petition gatherers were, to see them just kind of take the road of, well, we're just going to put it on the May ballot and we're going to write this bill and change the rules, is really disheartening. And I think that's probably goes along with what you were talking about, where it's that the tenth session and the far end of the spectrum groups that are trying to say you're either with us or you're against us, right? You're either you are all in with our party
Hmm.
line and do everything we say, or you're an enemy of us. And I think that's terrible, because we're the legislators are meant to be representatives of their communities and to speak for their communities, not to just toe a party line.
You're so spot on. And I think because you have to, in the legislature, you deal with so many issues, from healthcare to gas taxes to federal disconnect to gun bills to, I mean, you're all over the place. So you can't tell me that somebody is black and white on every single one of those issues because you can't, one, you don't know all of those issues. And two, there is a lot of gray in a lot of the issues that you deal with in the legislature. And every community is completely different, especially in Oregon. And I mean, the rural versus urban divide. And I think even House District 40 is kind of right at that front line of kind of moving to rural Clackamas County with kind of the urban, Gladstone moving into Portland, right? And you're kind of right at that epicenter of that, I think that friction between those two, because a lot of things in the legislature really can be characterized as rural versus urban in regards to how people want to govern or do policy. And it really is interesting. By the way, I'm sitting here with Adam Baker. I probably should say who you are, candidate for House District 40 now. Yeah,
Yeah,
good.
I would agree with that. House District 40 has a lot of bedroom communities for Portland, people that commute into Portland every day for work. But I live at the south end of District 40, and I mean, I can go on a walk and I can walk by people that have acreage and people that have livestock, and where the end of the urban growth boundary is a stone throw from me. So yeah, we're right on the edge of living in deep suburbs of Portland and living in the country. And so we have people on both ends of those arguments or those discussions. And
Hmm.
I think that a lot of the issues that come up in state politics come up every day for people in District 40.
Yeah, it definitely seems like a lot of the issues we talk about really, especially with how when Rep. Hartman would talk about voting and stuff, and she was, pretty torn on a lot of issues in the legislature. And because I think of what you just said, like the transsectionality of, is that even a word? I'm not even sure that's a word. Of that district that really crosses that, it means it's very difficult to see everything in black and white. Like you said, it's very gray. And for instance, the gas tax, in that district, like that is the Abernathy Bridge, that just train wreck of a project that it just doesn't stop and keeps costing taxpayers more. The 205 stuff that is just horrendous on traffic. And then all that does is spill out into your district with the side streets and all the other stuff that just make all that even worse. So, of course, she's voting no because she's looking at going, my district literally isn't getting what they've been paying for. We're getting zero improvement in our roads. The bridge is, what are we on, year 7 or 8 on that Abernathy Bridge?
It's got to be close, yeah. It's three times the original budget. It's way beyond what the time they said they were going to do it. I mean, these projects are costing everybody in Oregon, $1 billion per mile completed, and we're still not done yet. I mean, I drive through there several times a week, and it's not only is it the construction that's taking up a lane here and there every once in a while to do whatever project they're doing, but it's also reduced in speed down to 45. So even without a piece of machinery on the road, everybody has to slow down. So it creates slower traffic. And like you said, it spills over into side streets. People will jump off in Oregon City and come down 99 to get into Canby or to get
Yeah,
farther down onto I-5, and it congests all the streets there, and it
everything.
just compounds problems.
And it makes it very difficult to do business. It makes it very difficult just to get your kids across town to drop them off at daycare so that you can get back to work and, just really, and then ultimately it just creates frustration, right? That people are just frustrated. And I think that's my biggest thing with I love roads. I want more roads. And I don't mind paying for roads. And I don't think most Republicans aren't, but we're not adding any capacity. And that's the
Nope.
biggest problem was we have to add capacity. And I think there's a philosophical problem between the Democrats now, I think, and Republicans is they don't want to add capacity because they think it's bad for the climate and they want you to ride a bus. And we're saying, well, but we don't want if you want to ride a bus, we don't care. I mean, even though I hate buses and think light rail is just a big suck of money. But regardless of all that, they're taking away roads and making it less, and that makes it harder on business and harder on the other things, and just generally adds to the problem of, and roads would be great if you drove an electric car. Like that's good for the environment apparently, but maybe not if it's an Elon Musk car. But I mean, there's so much. I think our world's going to move to the fact of where you can get in a Waymo or a self-driving car that's good for the environment, and you can go from point A to point B like if you're an older person or something like that, for cheaper and way more efficient than it would be to try to get on a light rail on fixed routes that aren't actually getting you where you need to be. And I think that's the future of transportation in our country is self-driving cars and self-driving semi trucks that, we'll still get in and drive because we're Americans and we love cars and we love our muscle cars and things like that and getting out on the open road. But I think if you were just driving around town or doing things like I would get in a Waymo and not have to worry about driving. I think it'd be great.
The Waymos are interesting. They the first time I saw one, I think I was in I think it was in Phoenix, and I saw one.
Yeah.
Had to do a second look on what are all the cameras on this thing, and then hey, there's nobody in the front seat of that car. Now, for somebody that's been driving for many years, and for somebody that worked in public safety for a quarter of a century, there's some place in my brain that is very hesitant to get into one of those
Yeah,
things.
right.
But I know statistically that they are 10%, they get into 10% of the amount of crashes and incidents that people do, right? Because they're more attentive. They don't have the distraction of the radio, the social media, everything else. They have a purpose driven thing to go from point A to point B. But there is certainly a part of me that is a little hesitant to do that. Public transportation is kind of frustrating to me too. Again, having worked in public safety, I see all the problems that come along with a public safety system. And I attended a transportation hearing down at the Capitol when I was down there in January, and they were talking about how do we get more people on the public transport. And statistically, I think it was 10 or 15% of commuters are on public transportation at any one time. They want to increase that. So then now they're, like you said, they take away traffic lanes. They're taking away traffic lanes on 82nd so they can add more bus routes or add more bus, numerically more buses than we have now. But in the next breath, they want to talk about how they want to tax everybody per mile. So
Yeah.
you want to reduce the amount of people who are driving, but you want to increase the amount of money you're charging people who do drive. So those two funding models don't ever seem to come together. They just seem to be farther and farther apart. I'm not sure what the motivation is to do those two things at the same time. You think if you wanted to charge more per mile or charge everybody per mile, you'd do away with buses because then everybody'd have to drive on the roads and you'd make more money.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem to
It
come together.
it's very similar to remember the anti-smoking ads are paid for by smokers because they charge you when you buy cigarettes, right? Or the anti-drinking stuff, don't drink too much. It's paid for by the OLCC who makes more if they sell more.
Yeah,
So it really is counterproductive to your point that tax the thing you're trying to get people from doing, right? To pay for the other, because if you're successful at whatever you're trying to do, like you just said, then you're going to get less taxes. So, and then you're not going to be able to do the program that you want to do that's paid for by those taxes that you're now getting less of. So it really flies in the face of smart thinking. I think you're hit it spot on with that. When you were a cop, because you're a cop in Gresham for how long? 27 years? 25 years?
yeah, 26 and a half. Yeah, almost
All
exactly
with
26 and a half years.
all with Gresham?
Paid with Gresham. I was a reserve, so a volunteer deputy from Multnomah County for a
Okay.
little over a year before that. So I got almost 28 years total in.
Okay. And there's a lot of TriMet stops and bus stops there. I perceived when I lived in Gresham and grew up and was came back for the military and I was living with my parents for about 6 months before I moved to Portland State on campus. I took light rail downtown and I walk up to Portland State, right? And that was in whew, 96 probably. So you're probably still in high school. You're a few years younger than me. No,
I was
you're out
one
of
year
high
younger than
school.
you.
Yeah, you're a few. But anyways, I mean, it always seemed to be fine, right? There was never really any issue back then. I had to hop on light rail and just because I didn't want to pay for parking, right? Because parking
Sure.
was just a nightmare. So, and I had time because I was a student, and all you have is time when you're a student. But now I talk to people out there and they don't want anything to do with those things because they're just homeless camps and drug dens and like I'm just wondering like I think that's playing into the huge problem with public transportation is just the other the just the scared of just going through a depot like that. And I'm wondering, like your years in cops, is there a lot of crime at those places? Do you guys respond to a lot of things there? What was your kind of experience? Because I think that plays into the diving numbers of people riding public transportation.
Yeah, I don't know if I would. It's hard because I part of my time as a police officer I spent as a public information officer, so you kind of be careful how you word things. But I don't know that I would say that they're the major bus stops, the transit centers are that there's a ton of crime. I think there's probably a lot of things that go unreported, just kind of strange occurrences that people don't call in about. But there is um, there is a large propensity for homeless people to climb on, especially in inclement weather. When it's dark, when it's wet, when it's cold, they'll stay on there to stay warm. Um, and trying to remove them from there when they haven't paid their ticket, or they're causing a disturbance, or they're disposing of bodily fluids or whatever it is, certainly creates a negative environment for your everyday rider. Like you said, students going downtown to college or going to and back to work and back home from work. Um, but certainly we have, the things that we would get are we get assaults. We get people who are blocking bus lanes. We get people who were throwing things. We get people who um, breaking out windows on buses.
Yeah.
Screaming and yelling at people. Things that weren't maybe some things that weren't necessarily crimes. Maybe were more attributable to mental illness and drug use. But all that creates an uncertain environment to ride in, and people just kind of avoid it. I mean, I if I needed to go downtown Portland, I probably would drive. Primarily because I don't have any bus stops right next to my house.
Yeah.
I'd have to walk. I'd have to walk a little bit to get to one, but just the uncertainty of it. I don't. I want to be safe and secure in the environment I'm in, and not have to worry about if I put my headphones in, am I going to be surprised by something that comes along? Um, I mean, over the years, as services went away and anytime a government service goes away because of funding, because of whatever, I'm going to give you a good example. Centers where we could take people having mental health crises. When those centers went away, they said, well, we'll just have the cops do it. And so then the cops would take people, and if they could determine that they were uh, a significant risk to themselves or the safety of other
Mhm.
people, we could take them off the street and take them to an emergency room, which is not a fair place to take them either. Um, they have what's called a peace officer's hold, which is a 72-hour hold. But as the years went on, they would be let out in 2 hours because they would be checked over physically. And if they're physically, uh, not ill, if they're not hurt, if they're not sick, they would just push them out the door. There's no requirement for them to have any kind of contact with social services to start addressing underlying issues that cause that situation. And it's right back out into the public, and police getting called and fire and paramedics getting called. It's just kind of a never ending spiral.
Yeah, no, totally. And I just feel like that we're in when they talk about a doom loop of Portland, I feel like that's the doom loop of like the drugs, the homelessness, the schizophrenia or however you want to, you want to layer in those problems with people. And I just don't know how, we ever get out. I just don't know how you ever get out of that. When you now have enough of a population, what did they last point in time count was like 16,000 or so, I want to say that
Sounds about
wrong.
right.
Somewhere around there, we can use that as a number, but it's hit a certain number where you can't, what are you gonna do with those people if they're on drugs or even if they're not on drugs, they're just emotionally disturbed of some kind, they got some behavioral problems. Like there's not enough places for them to go, safe places for them to go, because then they're just gonna go back out onto the street, right? So you're only temporarily solving any solution. So we've hit a population number that now has just created a doom loop of its own that I don't think you can solve no matter how much money you throw at it.
Well, and the thing to remember too is that, and I've explained this to hundreds of people over my career is that it's not illegal to be mentally ill. It's not illegal to be high or intoxicated. To physically possess drugs is illegal. To be drinking in public is illegal. But once you've consumed them, it's not illegal. You're now just a person who has done that. And when it comes to mental illness, we can't force anybody to go anywhere. If they're as long as they're not creating a danger to themselves or somebody else, or committing any other criminal acts, it essentially you can offer treatment to them, you can offer services, you can offer a ride to the hospital, you can offer, there's a couple of
Hmm.
mental health professionals that ride around with a couple of officers, but you under our uh, under our civil liberty system, you cannot force somebody into treatment of any kind
Yeah.
without some sort of court order by a judge or something.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. What do you think? Like, I mean, since you've worked in it, and you've got a pretty good for, especially from the enforcement side of it, right? The public safety side of that angle, and I know Kevin Dahlgren and kind of the videos he puts out and all. I mean, it's just it's inhumane on some of the level that we let those people just die slowly on the streets. I think it's really inhumane. I mean, is it a state hospital, do you think? You just gotta like create enough beds where because like you said, it's not illegal to be, you know, to have behavioral health problems. But of course, if you do crime and you do other things, then you're crossing over into the illegal side of it. But I just don't know a way out, man. I've looked at a lot of stuff. I've sat on a couple behavioral health task forces with my boss, and like you kind of look at this, we're spending over $1 billion a year working on it, and we're just getting worse.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer on the way out. So in 30 seconds, could you tell me the answer? I'm just kidding. But where do you think we
Uh,
start? Is it just no more going in homeless? I think you have to start there, right? Just no more getting homeless?
well,
Or
I think that the amount of money we're spending on what Kevin Dahlgren refers to as the homeless complex is ridiculous. I think we've spent something like $2 billion between the city of Portland and Metro over the past few years, and in that time, we have increased our number of homelessness.
yeah.
We've gone up. I think the number in Portland is 35%. Not just black and white numbers, and overall statewide, I think we're up 60%. The stat that I saw was that the budget for the Joint Office of Homeless Services was $92,000 spent for each homeless person. And again, we're continually pushing numbers up. Um, I'll tell a story that during the COVID pandemic, when we would find homeless people on Metro owned property. We would call them and say, "Hey, do you want to trespass somebody off this property so we can kind of get this camp cleaned up, get these people, because it's causing issues with residential neighbors and everything else." Metro's answer was that we're not going to force anybody to leave Metro property while this pandemic is on. So we were spending money out of the Metro budget for this Joint Office of Homeless Services, but they weren't doing anything about it. They were actively not doing anything to help address the situation. So I don't know. The answer always seems to be let's throw more money at it. And
Yeah.
so far we've seen in just about every problem that doesn't help.
Yeah.
You can throw more money at roads, you can throw more money at programs for narcotics, you can throw more money at the homeless complex, and nothing seems to change. So
Shelter beds, housing, right? I mean, we're throwing more and more money at those things, and it's not fixing anything.
no.
Yeah.
No, and I don't, and I, if I had the answer, I would probably be in some sort of high level government position. But I don't have that answer. Obviously, nobody seemed to have that answer. I think what the stuff that Kevin shows on his videos, the stuff that he's doing is very proactive. When he worked out in Gresham with me, we did a lot of. I mean, he almost single handedly went through the spring water corridor in Gresham, and I don't want to say eliminated homelessness, but there was a massive
Yeah.
decline in the time that he was there. And like when I came out of detectives in 2019. went back to the street, there was we'd have a binder full of names. Okay, this is the normal person who's at this place, and this is their kind of normal MO of stuff they're going to do today. They're going to steal this shopping cart. They're going to steal a bike, and they're going to sell the bike and do all this stuff. But by the time Kevin left the city of Gresham, it was you could probably count on two hands how many chronic homeless people there were. And the reality of the homeless
Hmm.
situation is that of all of the homeless people that live on the streets, the people who are situationally homeless, like the people that they lost a job, they had one big medical bill, they something, something in their life, there was a single issue that happened and caused them to be homeless. That's like 10% of people. Those are the people that if you go out there and say, I have a shelter bed for you, I have a program for you, I can get you into a hotel for 3 days while we work on getting you ID, those people will say, yes, let's do it. The other 90% like being homeless. There are people, I know of people that were homeless in Gresham who had families with money, who had the offers of support from family, but they chose to live on the street because there was no rules. They could do drugs, they could sleep whenever they want, they could steal from stores without
Yeah.
consequence. It was just they that was their chosen lifestyle.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a certain level of lifestyle that we've gotten into, and Oregon has passed laws that has made it basically okay. And there's just enough money to live. There's just enough free shit out there to live. You can get they'll probably all get the Oregon Trail card where they get free food. They're probably on Snap. They probably get all of the free stuff that you get. And then occasionally, if you want a shelter bed to get a good night's sleep, you go get one, right? And then find some
But
old crappy RV to park on 92nd and Foster and sleep in it for a while. And.
Yeah, but the problem with going to shelter beds is there's no follow-up. There's no requirement. Okay, if you're going to be here for 3 days, and then we're going to get you into a Narcotics Anonymous program. Okay, and then we're going to get you into this. We're going to get you an ID. We're going to get you into job training. So having those wraparound services to help people in those situations and to show them that there is a positive motivation to get out of that situation, um, that's just not really done.
Yeah.
It seems to be a band-aid on a daily problem.
Well, and if you're choosing it as a lifestyle, I mean, there's nothing you can do because that person's
Correct.
choosing it as a lifestyle. So I think those ones we have
Correct.
to just say, well, if you want to do that, you're not doing it here. Time to move
Yeah.
on. Here's a bus ticket to San Francisco or Seattle, but you're not going to do it here.
Well, and that's how a lot of people got to Portland
Yeah.
people in other cities said, "Hey, we don't want you. We don't want you here anymore. Where do you want to go?" And the answer was overwhelmingly, I talked to people out of Kansas, out of Utah, out of Montana, out of Washington. Where do you want to go? I want to go to Portland because there's free stuff there.
Yeah. God, I hate to hear that. Because I think we had that. What was the we had some population. We finally are bouncing back with some population increases. And I'm just afraid it's those sort of people that are moving to Oregon that are just kind of bringing that it's not even like the free love movement of the 60s or anything or the hippie movement, right? I mean, it's this weird, vagabond drug user, but they don't even care. They don't want to live in a commune outside of, in Wasco County. They want to, they just want to be downtown Portland and just be druggies. And that's not what society should be. And we need to kind of push back on it. So, well, that
Yeah,
was
I guess.
depressing.
Yeah, like I said, we need to make it more appealing for people to proactively move in that direction. And it even through all the ice storms we have, we open shelters for when it's really
Yeah.
hot, we open cooling shelters. We hand out food. In Gresham, there used to be a group that
Yeah.
would bring a mobile shower, and they would
Yeah.
bring clothing. So you could show up at this certain location once a week and you could take a shower, you could get fresh clothing, and there would be fights over the clothing in the
Yeah.
bins.
Right. And
And
tents. Remember they're giving away free tents and all
yeah,
that kind of stuff.
Multnomah County was giving away tents and sleeping bags, and then people would go out and sell them for more money, so that they
Yeah.
can then go buy more dope, and they could get. I mean, it was just horrible. It's a horrible cycle in
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
all levels of government.
It is the doom loop, that's for sure. I mean, I think when they talk about the Portland big doom loop, but that's inside that world because you're never going to solve that. So I think it's pretty crazy. So on the campaign, where you ran in 2022,
Yeah,
181 votes short. You
yeah, yeah.
know,
It was tough,
it lost to Anessa Hardman, and you and Anessa have actually become friendly, I think is a good way of putting it, right?
cordial.
Cordial. There you
Yeah,
go. Probably better than
yeah,
friendly. Um, she was probably a pretty decent state rep, I would think. I mean,
yeah,
okay. I mean,
yeah. I mean,
I would
I
say
never
for
had
a
any kind of
Democrat. I would say for a
I
Democrat.
I never. I don't think I ever had made. I mean, thinking back on it right now in 10 seconds, I don't think I can think of a particular vote where I thought, oh, that was terrible. That doesn't represent our community. And like you mentioned earlier, I have to give her kudos for pushing back against the transportation bill and kind of going against um, her party's talking points and really
Yeah.
looking out for our community. So, um, yeah, I
It-
mean, but it was tough. It was, I mean, we ran it, like you said, 181 votes, 33,000 people cast a vote. So it's just over half of a percentage. Probably I think it was the closest race in the state that year.
oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I remember it well, Adam.
so yeah, I mean,
Yeah. It would have been
yeah, it
number
was interesting.
26 for us, which would have been great. I mean, it's just closer to that bipartisanship. When we talked to Anessa on that gas tax thing, and she showed us kind of off the record, she showed us her calls that day of they were doing the vote in the House. Like she just showed the missed calls and the amount that the sheer number of calls from would-be Democrat leaders was insane. Like, I mean, it's like at some point, what are you going to do, right? But of course, they got Javity to flip, and then that was kind of a bummer. And then he just even left the whole party. But regardless of all that, I think, and then he didn't run in 24. She had a pretty easy sail to a reelection. And it wasn't, do you think it was kind of like her really deciding not to run? I mean, what was kind of the factors that really kind of said, okay, I want to give this one more try?
I ran, so like you said, I ran in 22. I did not run in 24 because I knew I was retiring in the beginning of 25. So I had some collateral duties at work I needed to hand off, some responsibilities I needed to take care of, wrap up some cases, some files, some duties that I had. Um, and then in 26, yeah, I mean, she announced she wasn't going to run again. I knew that um, the messaging that we had in 22 resounded with a lot of our community, obviously. And um, I mean, I spent 26 and a half years serving the community where I grew up in Gresham. And now that I'm retired, I thought, you know what, I really want to find a way to serve the community that I live in.
Yeah.
And aside from all the other civic and volunteer groups I do, I thought that this was probably a great way to really stand up for these kind of this part of Clackamas County and represent them in Salem
Yeah.
and be a voice for them.
That's awesome. So you've done a few not interviews, but a few like talking and speaking to people out there. Like, is really I mean, that's what the polling's telling us is like the cost of living stuff from housing all the way down. Is that kind of what you're hearing on the ground too? Is that's really,
Cost of living is huge. Cost of living is easily the biggest topic because I think the transportation bill is so fresh in people's mind and they know what it was going to mean. I mean, even if they don't know what it was going to cost them personally, they know that sheer number of $4.3 billion over 10 years,
yeah,
people see that and just go, we can't afford that. And what I say in a lot of my the talking points to people is that I heard it said at an event somewhere in December. I heard it said so well, and they said, I can't afford to live here anymore, but I can't afford to leave. It's just people want to be here. They love Oregon. I mean, it's got a lot of potential. It's got a lot of natural beauty. It's got a lot of great things going for it, but we, they keep taxing us out of existence. So that's a huge one. Public safety is probably number two.
okay.
Um, just
Kind of like what we
they
talked about, all the drugs and the small, is it, because murders are down, so it's kind of just small level crime. They're just kind of tired of the car break-ins and just shit like that. Is that,
they're tired of that, and I've been hearing fairly recently that people are reaching the end of their tolerance on the disrespect for law enforcement
Yeah.
from small town cops all the way up to federal agents. There's there's a growing sentiment that's not okay anymore.
I mean, is that just because of the hard left-wing talking points that cops are just racist and all these things, or is it just this idea that somehow, I mean, because the problem, if you have a society without order, we have a problem. Like if there's no order in our society, like we have like societal norms that everybody adheres to, right? And they're kind of based on Judeo-Christian values or whatever, like, right? Do unto yourself as you don't want unto others, and or however that saying goes. But I mean, the golden rule, I think, is seems to be something that we're just ignoring. But I would just wondered, like with the order stuff, I just there's less and less of a desire to maintain order.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to people just want to do whatever they want to do. I mean, it's very much like I said, and like I said, I'm not equating this to everybody, but the reason people choose to be homeless is because there's no rules in that society, in what essentially is their society, right? They police themselves, they have their own set of rules, and they don't want consequences for actions. And I think that's kind of what people are seeing. There's a continual slow downhill amount of consequences for actions, right? They let more and more things slide. They don't prosecute this. They don't arrest for that. They give tickets for, there's, and part of that is how much room is there in the jail? How many officers are out there to effectively deal with the situation? But um, I think a lot of it just goes down to they don't want consequences for actions. They just want to do what they're going to do, and um, if it weren't for hurt feelings and bruised egos, we probably wouldn't need as many cops as we have now.
I like that line. Well, has it changed the police force? I mean, it seems like in Portland with all the ICE stuff that was happening, the protesting, and then the Portland police seemed to be, especially the police chief. I mean, that guy looks like a real loser, or just a wimp. I don't know. He crying on camera and stuff. Like, is it changed? I mean, I probably didn't change Gresham police, but it seems like are they recruiting? I'm not sure how I really want to ask the question, but it feels like the police itself maybe is even where they're not enforcing the order as much. And is it just because of I don't know, I just maybe it's just Portland police, but it really feels like they just don't even care about the low level crime anymore. And then that is, seeing a cop, like these people are just smoking crack pipes on the corner. So that's not like, oh, you see a cop, like when we were kids, you'd see a cop, right? And you'd run. Or if you see a cop and you're driving on the highway, you would slow down. You immediately hit your brake, right? But I don't see that as much anymore. And maybe that's kind of what you're getting at. There's that slow erosion of just who gives a shit? I'm going to do what I want and I don't care.
Yeah, and I can't speak obviously for Portland police. I've been out of it for a year. I mean, a lot of the people I know that were working when I was working are still there, and there's for the most part great men and women in law enforcement. Um,
Hmm.
so I can't really speak for that, but I would say that there's probably some fatigue going on because no matter what they do, the same problems happen. They know that if they go out and arrest somebody, it's going to be months until it's prosecuted, if ever, if anybody ever has to pay a fine or spend a moment in jail. And thinking
Yeah.
through like from this situation that's right in front of me and this bad thing is happening, and maybe this person's committing disorderly conduct in second degree, or they're doing criminal mischief in the third degree, whatever it is. Yes, low level crimes, and I could arrest them and take them to jail. In 2 hours, they're going to be back out, and they're going to be showing their friends, look, nothing happened to me. And if you get into a physical confrontation with somebody, what is, while legally justified, and yep, they can go to jail for that, is the risk is the risk worth the reward, right? Is it worth it getting into a physical altercation with somebody, injuring yourself, injuring somebody else, damage of property, to essentially give somebody a ticket. And I think that a lot of cops see, and I'll speak for myself. I know that we would go to things and say, I know we can do these things, but nothing's going to happen to them. And last time we did this, so and so fell and broke their collarbone, right? And
Yeah.
is that worth giving somebody a ticket? Um,
Mhm.
I just think that that the ability that we have to hold people accountable for what they do or what they are doing is, like you said, slowly eroding.
Yeah, it's a bummer. I mean, I think that's where I think if you don't have the prosecution or you don't have the that tough on crime, Rudy Giuliani scenario, like Portland's just going to keep kind of eroding down that path. So I don't know. We'll
I hope
see.
not. I mean, they're like I said, good people that work there, and they're always. I mean, if you look on social media, they're constantly advertising for more officers, and I think it's I don't know if it's on LinkedIn or what it is, but I saw the average officer makes X amount of money, great pay, great benefits, but you're going to work long hours. You're going to be standing in the cold. You're going to be standing in the heat. You're going to be
Yeah.
subjected to mental and physical abuse. You're going to see things that you will never forget. And so, yeah, great money. Like I say, great benefits, great camaraderie, but um, it takes
Yeah,
a
what is
toll.
Portland police? Do they pay the most as far as like the region, like around the metro for just like a normal beat cop kind of guy?
Yeah, I think Portland pays the most. You use comparable things when you're redoing your union contracts, but Portland pays the most. The county pays pretty well. Gresham pays pretty well. I mean, Hillsborough, Beaverton, they all pay, you know, relatively commensurate. It comes down to what opportunities are there. Are there opportunities for a, special assignment or other,
Mm,
you go to a detectives or school resource officer or horse patrol or bike patrol or whatever it is. Those things are enticing to people. It's not just more money.
yeah. And they get a lot of overtime, so they're probably pretty happy about Trump's no taxing on overtime, huh?
Yeah, but like I said, at a certain point,
It's a
it's
trade-off, yeah.
and I that was my deciding point when I retired was um you know even getting a little more money is not going to make me a whole lot happier. It's just um yeah, it's a tough job. It's a tough job.
Yeah. I was thinking, then I'll dovetail this into kind of my final thoughts, but because like all people that retire early and stuff, you sell real estate, and then sell. But it kind of goes in that point, like if you're an officer and you're making, I don't know, what 70, 80,000 a year, maybe somewhere in there, and with some overtime, you could probably break over the six figures. It's pretty hard to even afford a kind of a shitter house. Because everything's like in your area, kind of that area. What's the average house price? Is it over five?
Ooh.
Probably
Uh
550, 600 for like a decent house. You're looking at 600 probably.
you're probably for a decent house in a decent area, you're probably looking at 550, 600
Yeah.
somewhere in there. I mean, I'm sure somebody's going to come up and say, no, 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 the average price.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
No, just in general. It's not Lake Oswego, but we're talking like, kind of a nicer neighborhood, not a 50-year-old house.
yeah,
10-year-old house, 20-year-old house is going to be probably five,
close to
600.
600.
Yeah, a
Yeah,
couple
and and
thousand square
it's
feet.
and it's the interest rates on that are higher, and then I have a neighbor who bought at their house 3, 4 years ago, probably. They As soon as they moved in, they found out they needed a new roof, so they got a new roof, and then they started to have they found some problem around one of their windows, so they pulled out a window, found dry rot. So now they pull off all the siding and re-sided the house
Yeah.
and put in all the windows. I mean, not only do they have this large mortgage at a high interest rate, which is now we're in the 6 to 7% range. Now you've also got all these things that you have to redo to make the house livable. I mean, yeah, you start looking at houses that are built 20, 30 years ago, you're gonna have some things you got to replace. But that's a huge thing. I mean, I would have loved to downsize from my house. My kids are grown and gone, and so we have a too much room for just my wife and I and the dogs. But with the interest rates the way they are, and the price of of decent houses, it wouldn't have changed my monthly outlay at all.
Yeah, and that's kind of my point. Like if you're, a police officer making, and you probably don't want to live in Portland, so you're living in a neighborhood like Oregon City or something like that, and you're the only person bringing home the revenue. I mean, that's six times your income. That's why everybody feels like affordability is a problem because you're now paying after utilities and all those stuff, you're probably paying 3,000 net 3,000 a month out in a payment, and you're only bringing in net maybe if you're lucky 6,000, maybe 5,000. So that doesn't leave a lot of meat on the bone. And then God forbid something else happens if you got a car payment, you got to come over thing. That's why I think the affordability crunch is so difficult for people because the cost of housing, I truly believe, is driving the main part of that problem because it takes up so much of your income. And God forbid if they're both working and they got to pay for childcare because that's insane too. But I think the housing stuff is really kind of the problem. If we could get houses back down into that 300, 350 category for a, 3 bedroom, 2 bath banger starter home for a family, that starts becoming a little bit more affordable for people. And we can do that with cheaper land, cheaper things. But I think that there's a lot of regulations that make it very difficult. And Oregon is a very tough state to change any regulation because God help us, we've been doing it this way for so long, and let's just keep doing it the same way.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. We need better investment in our infrastructure. We need to make shovel-ready land more available for people to create homes on. I mean, Oregon's one of the most expensive places to build a house, to raise a family, to start a business, to run a business. And like you said, we need to find a ways to roll back some of those regulations, streamline things, reduce some fees, give people credits or something that entices them to do that and to stay here. Because right now we're running businesses off. We've got data centers, but we're seeing things like I think it was out in Boardman where now they're seeing pollution of the groundwater and they're sucking up all the power and that now heck they're even talking about launching data centers into outer space to solve the energy problem. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but just it
Good
just
idea.
I hate seeing businesses leave Oregon and because of the unfriendly atmosphere that the
Yes.
state holds towards people that want to make things better. We've got a lot of professional services here in Oregon, and but we're seeing less and less businesses that create tangible goods, and we're seeing things like, I mean, even I just saw it on the news yesterday that I think it was 35 microbreweries have shut down in the last couple
Yeah.
of years because they overregulate, they overtax, and they make everything harder to do.
Yeah. And a $9 beer is just becomes, you're just not going to buy it, right? I mean, you just
No,
can't. So,
no.
yeah. Well, awesome to have you on, Adam. Appreciate it. Voteadambaker.com is where you go to learn more about this fine young man with a great haircut.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks for having you on.
All right.